Hello, Collin. Thanks for coming. Thank you for your time. We meet here in this garden because I thought leaves are coming down, it's autumn, and your general research is autumn of human beings. You are a researcher, internationally acclaimed, I read and I saw, and you are also a reader. We have the books here. And there I realized you have many autographs, and all these autographs were warm autographs. So you are not only an researcher, but also a liked researcher. I tried to find out what you studied and where you were, and it's I hope I remind everything. Otherwise, you can tell us where you started your studies in Basel.
Yeah, that's correct. Well, thank you first of all for having me. It's wonderful.
You're welcome.
It's wonderful to be here with this wonderful scenery. Yes, so as I started as a researcher and a scientist, and one of the most important things to do is to read. So you read, you're trying to understand, and this is actually my hobby. I read lots of publications from other scientists, and then when scientists I know and I admire, they bring out a book. Of course, I'm going to read their book as well, and it's always a pleasure. And it's not so easy to translate or bring very complex biology, complex processes into simple terms, right? And so always astonished how well they can explain something that complex in layman's term, in simple terms, to the general audience.
Yes. Just shortly for us to know, you continued then your studies at the City University of New York, got a FD, master degree, went on to Cambridge, went on to Stanford, I think. You were everywhere.
Not quite. So I started out in Basel and at the Friedrich Mission Institute for, biomedicine. It's an Novartis-sponsored institute, and there started with my master's. And the reason why I went there was actually a little bit beforehand. I was going to the University of Basel, studying different things, and there was one professor, Walter Gehring. He's shown that he can, with gene manipulation, he could make flies that have legs growing out of their eyes by just changing the genetic code, one transcription factor. And I was like, this is amazing, because you could just genetically manipulate it, right? And it's not playing God, but you're trying to understand how biology works, right?
Yeah.
And I found like, how is that possible? And I started reading more and more about it. And also at the same time, there was another researcher there, Michael Hall. He discovered the mTOR kinase, which is important for growth, but at the same time also for aging, now we know. And so with this, I really stumbled into the aging field, because I read another paper from Cynthia Kenyon that shown that in C. elegans, which is a little round worm, a single mutation in a single gene was able to double their lifespan. So C. elegans lives around 3 weeks. Now, a single mutations out of 20,000 genes, right, was able to double their lifespan. And this is amazing if you think about how complex aging is. And so by then I knew, well, this is the biggest mystery I want to solve. And so what is the biggest problem that you always ask as a researcher? And from there, I went on and I thought, okay, well, aging is a real big mystery, but also the brain. Because when you age, you don't want to lose your memories, your identity. Is like the worst thing you can happen. So I went into Alzheimer's disease at the City University in New York, and trying to figure out like why you get this Alzheimer's disease when you're very old. Again, with simple organisms, C. elegans, and then moving further. And continue the aging research. I went to Keith Blackwell at Harvard Medical School. He was at the Joslin Diabetes Center to study more the insulin IGL-1 pathway, a pathway that's very implicated in aging and diseases, because certain people that over the age of 100, called centenarians, in that pathway they have mutations, and we think they're associated with their longevity. So I try to figure out like what's happening with that pathway and what are the mechanisms that are mobilized, right, if you change that pathway. And I found a lot of different things that are changed, they're protective, like better oxidative stress response, better protein homeostasis, how proteins get in shape. But one thing that was surprising were actually proteins called collagen, exomatrix proteins. So the collagens are, you see in the skin, right? During aging, they decline or get fragmented, that's why you get wrinkles. But that's also happening inside your body. And so that started my new venture into the exomatrix, their implication in health and disease. And I joined the Institute for Translational Medicine at ETH Zurich, where I was studying this at my lab for the last 7 years. And we made some really cool breakthroughs and discoveries at that time to figure out how that works.
So doing research, I always think you have to be really patient and tenacious, and you have to wait not 1 year, you have to wait 10 years. So, and you are very successful, obviously. What do you think, what traits of yours made you come so far?
Well, you know, typically people that in my field are doing this, we are kind of obsessed. It's a passion, it's a hobby, right? So this, I get up in the morning around 4:35. I get up excited, want to continue making discoveries, and for me, it's like being an artist. I really love what I do, and to move this forward. And of course, you have to have patience and persistence. So. Yeah. As you mentioned, I mean, some discoveries go fast. You make them within a year, you can bring it out. Other discoveries, it takes a long time. So at least 2 of my discoveries, one of them took 10 years and the other one 11 years. In a sense, to really figure out how it works on the molecular level. What molecules are changed during aging? How does it exactly work? What are the benefits? We on the molecular level. It took a long time. There were lots of things that went into the wrong directions, like, you climbing up a tree, but then you went to a wrong branch. And so, okay, now I'm wrong. I go backwards, go up, till you find, the top of the tree and figure out, try to solve the whole problem, and then to bring this out as a publication.
I can tell here in your eyes, you're so enthusiastic about it. It's really passion, but a long-term passion.
Yes, it's a long-term passion. I'm happy I was able to do this, because with any passion you have, you want to do something, you want to have also the freedom to study anything you want to. And for that, you have to raise money. So I was very fortunate to raise money from the Swiss National Science Foundation. They gave me a lot of freedom to move forward and just let me just go with it, even though certain things at the beginning had no clear application, right? Yeah. And it's also one reason why I love to give interviews, because my science is actually sponsored by people paying taxes in Switzerland, right?
Yeah. So you give it back.
I want them to know what's happening with their money, actually, right? So at least
especially Swiss people wants to know what's happening with my money. That you're correct. Having all these books here, you have sort of a role model or personalities that impressed you or inspired you better?
Yeah, during my 20 years I've been doing this, I had lots of different mentors and inspiring people. And at the moment, the one that is at the moment my inspiring person is actually George Church at Harvard Medical School. Yeah. He has a huge lab, over 100 people working for him, but he combines at the same time not only academia but also industry, and he's doing just like the most craziest and fantastic research. Even like he's so involved, he also goes by himself into the lab and does the experiments. So I've been through his lab meetings, been sitting in there. He was always approachable. It takes 2 weeks, but you still can talk to him for 5 minutes. Yeah. And then when he has a really cool idea, he just doesn't shy away. He just, goes in the lab and does it himself. And I brought one of his book, and so this is one of my favorite called Regenesis from him, and it's just, you know, all the ideas for synthetic biology. How can we regenerate a genome that no virus can attack us anymore? So you could actually, if you rebuild that one, no viruses would have any effect. So coronavirus, HIV virus, all of them could not attack us anymore. You could actually resynthesize your genome to do this. He has other things like the woolly mammoth, right? So it's extinct, for example, and he found out that you can use different in elephants. You can, you know, put in the genes that they make them more resistant to cold, and to like resurrect not the woolly mammoth itself, but the same as species in this kind of way. And they're really needed up in Siberia and in the fields that nobody is living to. You know, it's for nature to reestablish the environment, because animals and plants go together, and it's an ecosystem. And again, he has, you know, that project. I've been there at start 2012 when I was at Harvard, right? And the idea and the person who's putting that forward for the last 10 years, they had no real funds. It's like 10,000 per year or something like that. But they kept pushing. And now they really got successful also raising money and really pushed that project forward on the international level.
So yeah, that's impressive. That's inspiring, really. So you are. So do you have any results or anything you could say we have already here for everybody available?
Yeah, in terms of healthy aging, right?
Yes.
So the lowest hanging fruits are, you know, your environment. So, you know, doing you know, sports. That's very exercise, eating a little bit less for diet restriction or malnutrition. At the same time, you also have supplements, right?
Yeah.
And so from our research, we found a supplement that's in the area of extra matrix and collagens, how these proteins are actually turned over with time. And we found a way to actually activate this. This protein turnover of the collagen is something that works very well when you're young. Also, when you, for example, you go into the gym, you train your biceps, right? Your muscle grows, but the surrounding, the extra matrix also needs to grow, right? And for that, you need collagen and other things to be remodeled there.
Yeah.
And as any process, that works very well when you're young, but declines during aging. So we found a way to switch this on again and tell the body, hey, you should also work on the extracellular
Hey,
matrix.
body,
Yeah.
listen. And it functions. And that's where you are moving on now more into clinical research or clinical applications?
It's correct. So just to give you a bigger picture of what
Yes,
I've been doing
please.
for the last 20 years. So I really started with the basic science question, what is the biggest mystery, right? And making those first experiments on the genetic level, on the biochemistry level, and the molecular level, right? And we came pretty far with model organisms. Even at that time, 20 years ago, other scientists were laughing at us, like, yeah, aging, you know.
It affects everybody.
Exactly. And so we figured that one out. So there from these model organisms, we went into mice and were able to show also preclinical applications, so-called, to show effects on, you know, postponing aging has effect on age-related diseases. Now, the field where the field is stuck now is how we translate these really cool findings from mice and model organisms, how we translate that into humans.
Yeah.
And the only way to do this is in clinical applications. So meaning that, you know, you want to figure out whether whatever you're taking it's safe and effective. And what the major challenge is, aging is not classified as a disease. So you have to establish certain protocols or certain primary outcomes.
That you can do always the same experiment or protocol, so you have the exact results reproducible.
Exactly. So for example, so let's say you have a drug or a supplement, right? First of all, you want to figure out, is that safe? So you test that, of course, in preclinical package. You have the right to go into humans, and then you're going to test this one. Okay, it's not toxic. That's perfect.
No
But then
side effect.
Exactly. which you don't want to have with something for aging or longevity. You want something that has minimal side effects, should be as safe as water or something like that, right? I mean, water, you can also die from water, but that's another way, right? But then the second step, you want to know, is it effective? Because if you take something, you have no clue whether it's really working. And you have all the fantastic science in the background, they worked in mice, but we are not mice. Does it really work for you? And we also are all different, right? So you have the heterogeneity. So that's why you have to study this more in bigger clinical trials. And so that's the next step I'm going to, from translational medicine, right, into really going into clinical trials to show this.
Yeah.
With that, I would, close the circle, right? So I've been doing this for 20 years. I guess the next 20 years I'm going to go
You're busy.
and move to forefront. But then we really have, applications to go into humans and to really what my mission statement is, to bring health and life quality to the elderly population.
Yeah, because lifespan expanded, but health span didn't follow. So we end up badly.
Exactly. And it's also, for women, they stay longer in poor health, which is another issue, right? So you also have the gender difference. As I meant, not everybody is equal from the genetic setup, but also even you have gender differences, where very important to make some studies and come up with some protocols and figure out also markers to measure, like, do we have any improvements, right? So you do, for example, caloric restriction. Do you have any improvements in your health? What do you measure? What parameters are, there to say that you're really healthier, right? And so only if you can quantify something, you can manage it.
So it's lots ahead, but there's hope.
There's,
There
it's
is
very exciting.
It's very exciting. So when people ask you, Collin, you are in this field and getting older and do you give advice?
I give advice for the science part, but I'm not a medical doctor, so I'm not gonna give any advice or anything like that, no.
But you have students and you have your staff and everything, and you have to lead them.
Yes. So I mentor people, right? I manage projects. I usually choose people that can lead a project themselves and do the pioneering. So with the science part, you sometimes have things you want to go in a direction, but if you give too much input, right, then the creativity is lost. Because in science, you want to do something original, something really like new, novels, a real breakthrough, right? And with that, you just have to give people lots of creativity, right? I just give the direction, we want to solve that problem.
Within certain limits, and then you let them go.
Let them go, and so it's also important that they own the project, because if you do something on yourself, you're much more motivated, and it's a very frustrating business, as you can see lately in the news. Lots of PhD students, they get depression and things like that, because it's very tough. So not everybody's really made for that one. So first of all, they have to figure out whether, we have lots of smart people, but you also have the endurance. It's like running a marathon, right? So lots of people can sprint and have the athletic ability, but then you also have not only the endurance, but you also have to bring it every day. It's very hard. You have to train.
Years and years and years. That's really hard.
Exactly.
It's really hard.
It's really hard, and it can be also frustrating, because the science we do, it's a zero-sum game. Meaning that if I work in a direction, and I'm sure other people will have the same idea. If the idea is really great, then you have one or two other people in the world that have the same idea. And then it's a race. And the problem is the winner takes it all. So if they publish before you, you lose everything, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the problem at the moment with the science. It's a zero-sum game. It's not very, interactive in that sense, because you have the competition.
There is the competition, and the winner takes it all. It's like this. Oh.
But it's also very interactive. So science is not done in isolation, right? So we have my team. I sit lots of in the quiet room. I think about the problem. I think of strategy. Discuss this internally. But then it's very important that you go out and talk to other scientists in meetings and have the interaction. And so that was actually less during the Corona time, and now it's full blown. I just come from the biggest meeting in Copenhagen, the ARDD, the Aging and Drug Discovery meeting. 300 scientists on site and around 3,000 to 5,000 people watching online. And there the interaction, it was just like talking to everybody. It was super interesting.
And other angles to look at it.
Yes, and also other problems, other things, to think about and helping each other, right? So you want to sometimes also spin back the idea and see what feedback you get, or critiques, so you know what to work on, what you should watch out. And so it's a very interactive kind of things to move forward.
Yeah.
The same thing, at the same time, I have the competition. So you have to be careful how much you share with whom, right?
Not too much.
Not too much.
I just wanted to mention, but...
Yeah. But also see, like, other people have, the same idea, and they say, okay, can we actually join forces, right, to move it forward? Because every lab has their unique capabilities and new things they can do, and then of course you get much better answer if you join forces.
Right. So you have a clear vision of the future world. Yeah, a clear idea, I think, sort of utopia.
Clear vision. I mean, at the moment we can do much more than we do. The reason I say this is because now if you go to a doctor, and I saw this with my father, and there are different problems, the doctor says, well, you're just old. It's just normal, right?
Yes.
And so we can do much more there, I think. And the science is there, and my vision is to really translate that and bring this. And it's a shift in medicine, right? From reactive medicine to a preventative, which is already coming up, but also one thing that starts earlier, right? Yeah. And so a proactive kind of medicine. If you know exactly what to do and you have the right things to quantify, then we can do this. And so that, I think that's where the future should go, and that will increase life quality. I mean, I see this myself. Certain things I do, I react better or not. So, for example, some interventions programs for intermittent fasting, I have no real benefits. So I stopped doing this. For other ones, I have a benefit, right? Yeah. So I know what works for me, so I can improve my health to move forward. And that would be the goal, to have something personalized for everybody, in a sense, right? Okay. To have a really good intervention and treatment. And then, of course, you have a better outcome, you have better health, and that comes back again to everybody, because 1 out of 4 people will be older than 65 in Switzerland and Europe, right? And who's going to carry them, right? And it's the young people. So the young people have to think, like, how can we make an environment so we can integrate elderly people, help them also with the daily lives, right? Keep them active, but also give them like the best possible health, so they, don't spend the last couple of years in sickness and poorly, which is a tremendous cost if you look at the costs that come for the society.
You sent me this folder, and it was this article in there full of statistics, and I thought, oh, Collin, please. And then I started reading it, and it was amazing. I couldn't stop reading it because it affects us all, and there are, for example, numbers talking about how much it costs us in Switzerland, for example, the healthcare for elderly people. It was billions, I think.
That's correct. That's correct. I mean, it's not. I mean, even if you look at the U.S., I mean, just the costs for Alzheimer's disease is around 144 billion per year, and that doesn't even takes the cost that the intake, right? The personal costs are not included, and it's just skyrocketing. And that's just one of the age-related diseases. There's so many more. It's amazing. And it's also, the cost that are in the last year that's spent, right? And so it's the sick care cost, and that has to be prevented. And that paper you mentioned, we just mapped it out for Switzerland, because Switzerland, if you think about it, it's like an island, right? You have people very high life quality, you have, you know, insurance, you have everything you want to have to be as a country, but we still face the same problems, right? We're going to have huge costs if we don't change the system. We laid this out on the financial side,
Yes.
also so, you know, we go into a so-called Japanification on the finances that we see in Japan is happening here as well. We're just a little bit behind it. And then
It means you get, Japanification. It means getting older, but
no, it's just on the financial system. How is the investment done, right? It's just going to be you're more reluctant. There's the innovation, you know, is not the same way, and it's a little bit complicated model. And so we talk to different finance people to actually help us with that one. It's just like, you know, the investment situation and how money is handled is just going to completely shift, because you have, you know, if you have a quarter of elderly people, right, and they have a lot of wealth, right, how are they going to redistribute the wealth? How are they going to invest it? What's going to happen there? That's just from the financial side.
Yeah.
And then we looked at from the medical side, right? So about the comorbidities, meaning that, you know, if a patient gets, for example, cancer, right?
Yeah.
And other groups have been also calculating this. If we could erase all cancer, right? We could cure all cancer, say
yes.
prostate cancer, brain cancer, breast cancer, we get rid of all of them. The health and lifespan would be only increased by 3.3 years.
Oh.
Why?
Why?
The reason is that, you know, the person would be cancer-free, but will get Alzheimer's, cardiovascular problems, Parkinson, right? So these are called exactly, these are called the comorbidities, right? And so we worked with lots of people that study this one from the medical part, and it's a big problem. And the underlying, the highest risk factor for all these diseases is actually aging. So the idea of geoscience, what we are doing, right, is actually if we can slow the aging process, we can postpone these age-related diseases, right?
Yeah.
And so that would get a huge, also not only for the health for the person, but a huge financial increase, right? In the US, if we could do this, it's like $3 trillion or something like that. It's amazing much. And we try to calculate the cost for Switzerland, right? So you have a real benefit, right? But the system has to change from, you know, sick care to really healthcare, so to speak. Prevention.
Mm. But talking and listening to you, there is hope. And please just hurry up.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Collin. It was really nice talk.
Thank you.